Hi, welcome to my channel Cloud with Girish. I'm Girish, an AWS community builder and cloud tech enthusiast with expertise in delivering customer-focused and business-impacting cloud transformation programs of high complexity. In my previous video, I shared various Kiro features like vibe coding, specs-driven development, steering dock, and hooks. All these features were available prior to reinvent 2025. This time, I am demonstrating about a feature of Kiro that was announced during reinvent 2025. This feature is Kiro Powers. I will use Postman Powers in Kiro to demonstrate how you can use agentic AI to create API test collection and then use it in Postman to validate your API endpoints. Let's look at what did I build and why. A few weeks back, I built a CRUD API for customer lookup using AWS Kiro. Based on my prompts, Kiro created multiple API endpoints to look up, create, update, and delete customer information. It created a tech stack including API Gateway, Lambda, and Dynamo DB. An IAC code using AWS SAM was created as well to build and deploy this solution to AWS Cloud. At that time, I used Postman to validate the API endpoints and created the needed Postman collection manually. Fast forward to December, post reinvent 2025, now Kiro supports powers, and one of the powers is Postman Power, for which Postman, the creator of the tool, is the creator of this power. I decided to try out this Postman Power and use the same API endpoints to validate this. With this Postman Powers in action, Kiro created the entire collection in minutes. This was not just a prototype or proof of concept. It was an opportunity to see how Kiro AI-driven coding capabilities could help me automate the repetitive task of API validation collection creation, thus saving the time and allowing me to focus on ensuring that APIs are built correctly and to the specs. Let's look at the architecture diagram to understand how the different components of this customer lookup API interact. I have the API gateway, which is using the Lambda function, and Lambda function has the business logic for the customer lookup API, and it supports the CRUD operation, and then Dynamo DB is the data source. So Lambda is interacting with Dynamo DB to retrieve or store the information. Now, keep in consideration that I already have a customer lookup API running and I'm using Postman for the API testing. And then I will extend in this example the use of Postman Power. So let's look at the prerequisite. Need to have familiarity with the AWS Management Console, knowledge of Python Boto 3 since that's what I'm using for the Lambda function, basic understanding of AWS SAM because that's the IAC template that's being used to build and deploy the solution. Basic understanding of Lambda and API Gateway just because so you know that how the API is functioning. And then basic familiarity with event-driven design and architecture. You do need Kiro install, you need Postman install, and then of course you need customer lookup API build and deploy. This is like customer lookup API detail is not in this particular video. Refer to my previous article or the video for this customer lookup API. So let's look at what are Kiro Powers. So Kiro Powers are modules created in partnership with developer tool providers to supply tool-specific context and expertise to agentic AI-based development workflow. In simple terms, Powers combine tool-specific MCPs and steering documentation into a single unit that guides the agentic AI with the right context, resulting in more accurate response and higher quality code or artifact generation. There are many different Power available today, including Postman, Figma, Terraform, Stripe, and more. In this video, I will be using the Postman Power with Kiro to demonstrate how it can generate a complete API collection. So let's see how Kiro and I did it. Once I have my Kiro session started, I simply provided Kiro a prompt. And here is the exact prompt I used. I said, I have a customer lookup API using Postman Power, create a collection for get customer API. That's it. I did not provide a schema definition. I didn't provide an open API specs. I didn't provide any other instruction. So if you look at here, the screenshot from my Kiro IDE, Kiro responded back saying, hey, I see you want to create a Postman collection for a customer lookup API. Since you mentioned Postman Power, let me first activate the power to understand the capability and then help you create the collection. So Kiro is responding back in the context of the prompt that I provided and then is activating the power. Now, what I found interesting that instead of blindly creating something new, Kiro responded by evaluating my existing workspace. As part of this assessment, it found the customer lookup API and confirmed that it will be building the API collection for this customer lookup API. So if you see here is the response saying, Kiro is telling me that, hey, I can see you already have a workspace called customer lookup API, and let me create a workspace to create the collection and so on. And basically it's confirming this, the feedback loop is providing me that this is the API is going to use to create the collection. Now, full CRUD collection in minutes, right? So Kiro recognized that my customer lookup API includes multiple endpoints such as get customer, list customer, create, update, and delete customer. So it automatically created a Postman API collection for the endpoint, ensuring that each request includes the appropriate parameters and is ready to run. So here are the API endpoints Kiro created the collection for. So these are the existing endpoints as part of my API building, and Kiro created the collection for all these endpoints, including get customer, list all customer, create customer, update customer, delete customer. Kiro not only created the collection, but also included the environment variable for endpoint portability. It did not hardcode the API URL, rather it created a base URL environment variable, and then it also added API key variable for the authentication header. So because this API is I have configured it as rate limit, so it requires a subscription key, and that's the API key that it configured the parameter for. Here is an example of the collection it created. It's not the full code here, but it's the subset of the JSON, and as you can see, it has created this collection. Now, once Kiro confirmed that the collection had been created, I wanted to test it using Postman. However, I could not initially find the collection in my local workspace because it wasn't there. So since Kiro was acting as my peer programmer, I decided to ask where the collection had been saved. And as you see in this screenshot, Kiro responded just like a true peer programmer, explaining that the collection was saved directly in my Postman environment. This eliminated the extra steps of manually importing the collection into Postman and allowed me to start testing immediately. So if you see here, I genuinely didn't know where this file has been saved because I was using it first time. I thought, hey, it's going to create a collection and save it in my workspace. But it did not do that. It did give me an option to do it after I asked it. But basically what it did very smartly, because I provided my Postman configuration when I was setting up the power. So it did not save it there. It created, and then it automatically basically created a workspace for that collection in my Postman environment. And then it's telling me now that, hey, here you can find it. Go to this workspace, look at this collection name and so on. So that's pretty smart. Now I know that my collection is in the Postman. So I started my Postman tool. And when I go there in my collection, I can see that in my workspace, the collection is there. So there is a get customer, list customer, create, update, delete, right? So all these same thing that Kiro told me that it has created the collection for. So now since I am in Postman environment, I decided to validate the get customer endpoint. And if you see here, I'm invoking it. I have already provided value for the environment variable that Kiro has configured for me, which is the base URL and the parameters. And based on that, it's giving me a 200 OK and basically giving me the response back. So this response is coming from the Dynamo DB via Lambda through the API gateway. And in this Postman, I'm getting the response back based on the validation from the collection that was created by Kiro. Let's look at another example. Now this is the create customer validation. So in this one, I'm adding another customer in the Dynamo DB, cust002, and it's adding it. Again, I'm sending the endpoint, like I'm invoking it and providing the data. Now, when I run the get customer again, now this time I'm getting the updated list. So because now I have two customers stored. So I'm getting both back in my response and I'm getting 200 OK. So this is pretty cool that Kiro created the collection. I can go to Postman and basically just start testing it. So it saved me time to create that collection manually. Now let's see it in action in Kiro as well as in the Postman. So here I am in my Kiro environment. This is the Kiro IDE, and I just want to show you how I provided the prompt and how the collection got generated. So this is a pretty like standard view of IDE is built on fork from VS Code. So it looks very similar to that. So I got my folder and I have like my extension and so on. But here is the Kiro, and I can like click here on the power, and I will see all the powers which are available to me. In this particular case, I already like installed the API testing with Postman Power, and it has configured the MCP for me. So if I look at the MCP configuration here, it's going to show me the MCP configured for the Postman. I'm not opening it here because it has my environment key information, which I don't want to record it. So, but if you click here, it will give you the MCP JSON. So once this power is added, which was really just one click and then providing my Postman key, then I can go and provide a prompt. So here, just like I was sharing before, I provided a very simple prompt saying, hey, I have a customer lookup API using Postman Power, create a collection to get customer API. And if you see here, it immediately recognized the need and started looking at my workspace and so on, and then confirmed that, hey, I found a customer lookup API. So it got that context and it used that context to create the collection. Now, at the end, this is where the feedback loop comes, right? So it's provided me that, hey, what it has created and what feature it has added and so on. Now, if you see, I couldn't find the file. So I asked it, hey, where is the collection file saved? And it provided me the information that it's in the cloud, in the Postman environment. So that way I was able to get it. And it also gives me like, hey, if you want a local copy, then I can create a local copy for you. And I said, sure, create a local copy for me. So it created a local copy, which is basically like, my collection JSON. So if you see here, this is the collection JSON that Kiro created for me. So in this video, I demonstrated how Kiro powers combined with Postman powers can accelerate API development and testing by eliminating the repetitive setup work. Instead of spending hours manually creating requests and configuring environment, Kiro evaluated my existing workspace and generated a complete customer API collection with all required endpoints ready to use. The real magic was in the feedback loop. Kiro didn't just create requests, it understood the context of the existing API, generated a well-structured Postman collection, and clearly explained what was created and why. It felt less like a tool and more like a technical partner supporting the API testing workflow. What started as a simple request to generate a Postman collection quickly became a practical demonstration of how agentic AI can improve everyday developer workflow. With automated test, environment variable, authentication header, and validation already in place, the result was a fully usable Postman collection that could be tested immediately. Whether you are building a new API, refining an existing one, or standardizing collection across teams, Kiro's blend of AI-assisted automation and contextual understanding makes it easier than ever to move from idea to tested implementation, fast, accurate, and reliable. Generative AI is not replacing good API design or testing practice, it's enhancing them. And with tools like Kiro, even routine tasks like creating a Postman collection can feel like working alongside an experienced API engineer who understands your workspace. Generative AI is transforming how APIs are built and tested, and tools like Kiro are making that transformation practical. While increased AI-generated artifacts can introduce new challenges, features like context awareness, spec-driven workflow, and automated validation help maintain quality and consistency. I believe this is just the beginning, and these tools will continue to evolve rapidly. I'm constantly creating new content on various AWS topics, so please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Cloud with Girish channel. Your support helps me continue producing valuable AWS tutorials and workshops. Stay tuned for more exciting content. Thank you.